Hello, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who love the Cubs but live in New York. I am one of them. My name is Adam Amawal, and I'm here not with Kevin McCaffrey. Kevin is otherwise deposed this week, with a comedian and Cubs fan who does live in Chicago. Everybody's fan favorite, Ken Schultz. How's it going, Ken?
Oh my goodness, that's the first I've been brought up with that. That's awesome. Sorry everyone. Kevin, despite being in the prime of his podcasting career, has been traded for teenagers.
Yep.
And I am your podcast Alfonso Rivas. So you're welcome.
You know what? I like Kempfer Rivas. I think I feel pretty good about, of all the trades that the Cubs have made over the past couple of years. I think I feel all right about the Rivas trade. Follow us at Away Games Pod on Twitter and Instagram for hot takes on all things Tony Kemp and much more. And follow Ken at Ken Schultz _ on Twitter and at Ken Thin Guy on Instagram. We've had him on so many times. I know all of his handles. That's how it works here.
That's what your friendship means to me, man. Is that memorized Instagram handle? Hits me right here. And here I am, of course, pointing to the Cubs logo on my chest because I'm going to the game tonight. Like a mark, pretty much. They got me again.
You know, it's okay. I think we all, any of us who were upset at the trade deadline, which should be, frankly, every Cubs fan, all had that moment where we were like, so do we just not even watch this team anymore? Like, I certainly went through at least a week or two where the most I was doing was maybe looking at like a condensed game or a recap and largely like checking Rizzo and Baez and Bryant's stats on other teams. But these Cubs have somehow made themselves likable in a way that I did not expect. And let me ask you, did you think there was any world in which we would be talking about a 7-game winning streak after the trade deadline?
If there was such a world, it's one that includes both the Minnesota Twins and the Pittsburgh Pirates. So that probably makes some sense
there was one game. There was one game against the Reds in there. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. And good on them. That's honestly, in terms of the emotional response, I'm kind of straddling two emotional worlds where I still loathe ownership and management. I mean, at this point, I'm still very much on hashtag fire Jed, sell the team. Jed is still dead to me. Poor Jed is dead to me. But watching, especially over the past week, there's a sense that, even after the massacre and everything that's taken place, it's really nice to see that this group of guys gets to have a Wrigley moment. And I realize that sounds a little Yankee-ish to say Wrigley moment, but if they're going to be here for 2 months,
cue the natural music.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into Frank Schwindel, but
right.
But it's really nice just to see that if these guys are going to be here for 2 months, they're making the most of the fact that we get to be like legit big leaguers, kind of for 2 solid months. We get to live the MLB life. And everybody got to really experience what Wrigley is like when the fans are into it and excited again. And for guys who have been journeymen for the most part, their entire major league lives and minor league lives mostly, that's a really cool thing. And that's not a small thing.
No, not at all. And it's nice to see. I think, we talked about this a little bit on the podcast last week, but it's this weird kind of juxtaposition where for all of us as fans, this is the first time since 2014 that it really feels like we're watching things that don't matter. But for the players who are up on the big league Cubs right now, it is of huge importance because these are people who are getting what could be their one shot to really prove themselves as an everyday player. And, you look at someone like a Frank Schwindel and certainly Patrick Wisdom when he was called up earlier, they are very much making the most of it. And no, that doesn't mean that Frank Schwindel is going to go get a 4-year, $200 million contract after the season. But you can tell they care, and you can tell that they cared when they were losing. And that's why, as much as it was frustrating, and I feel like there was a stretch there where almost every game the Cubs were losing, 12-2 or whatever. It wasn't because these guys weren't trying. It's just because the field, the product on the field was not a major league product.
Right. It felt extremely 2012 or 1999 or pick, any one of some god awful Cubs years out of a hat. It felt exactly like a rerun of that, which coming, less than a month after we had Rizzo, Bryant, and Baez all together. I mean, that's as big. Is that that's like a Marlins-esque come down from, the the
Yeah.
world champion either world champion Marlins.
I mean, it was a fire sale. There's no other way to describe it.
Oh yeah, essentially
Yeah.
we became the Marlins, and
Right.
I think the expression on Frank Schwindel's face over like pick a game at random, especially from this past week, where you just see that he's resolved to just have the time of his life over. He knows he's going to be up for 2 months, probably for the first time in his career. He knows he's going to be up in the major leagues and not worry about being sent down for a couple months.
Right.
And you could kind of see the mental process in his mind of, you know what, I get this opportunity. I am going to live every part of this, the big league life, and enjoy the big league life, every part of this. And I'm going to give you an odd comp. It's kind of Jon Stewart-esque in the sense that when Jon Stewart got the Daily Show after his MTV show got canceled, and after a couple of his character roles in movies kind of sort of got on the radar, but mostly fizzled out. Like that was his career resolution of, you know what, I'm doing this whole thing my way. And if it blows up, fuck it. I did it my way. I don't care. And you could see the freedom in the way he operated on the Daily Show. And he made it his own. And you can kind of see that same freedom on Frank Schwindel's face after every game-winning home run he hits. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to bring up. And I think it's something that people don't necessarily understand if they're not big baseball fans, is that like baseball is a game where there is so much pressure on everyone. But when you are someone who you know that if you have like a bad game or a couple of bad at bats, you might get sent back down at any given moment. It's very hard to settle in and be relaxed at the plate and do. That's kind of the catch-22. It's like, how do you do all the things that you're supposed to do, which is like take a deep breath and relax and stay composed when you know that there's so much riding on every pitch. And I mean, I think that's true of anyone. And that's, I like the Jon Stewart comparison because we've seen that amongst our comedian friends and people that we know in our industry. When people finally get that job that allows them to breathe, the work gets so much better often because they're not feeling like they have to, you know, chase down a one-nighter in Toledo or whatever it is. They can actually like relax and do their best work without having that pressure. And I mean, it's hard to tell what the ceiling for someone like Frank Schwindel is. There's a weird part of me that actually thinks that he might have a better shot of being an everyday big leaguer long-term than Wisdom. I think Wisdom, you're looking at like a Shane Spencer-esque sort of situation, or Aristides Aquino, or that sort of thing where like guys are going to figure out what not to throw him so he doesn't hit 450-foot home runs. Frank the Tank, on the other hand, I think I'm going to get close to what this actual stat is. I believe in like 34 games, he's hit safely in like 29 of them. It's like something almost impossibly good. And seemingly the skills are there. I don't know, like, do you know a lot about Schwindel's background? I know he like bounced around with the Royals. He was on the A's before they released him.
I have not researched, no. I mean, like yourself, like I think a lot of us, for most of these guys, I'm getting my background essentially from what Boog and JD are telling me on the Marquee Network. You know, partly because I don't know how many of these guys are going to be here after 2 months. So it's like I'm kind of cliff noting this team for the last 2 months, which feels weird. You know, I mean, you've been to games with me many times. You know that one of my baseball points of pride is that for the most part, I will talk your ear off about anybody up there. And there's only like a select few people I can say that that's a point of pride with, because for most people, yeah, that's a social defect. But, but yeah, this Cubs team is like, you know, I'm kind of waiting and seeing how many of these guys I really need to learn about and get into the weeds about, probably until after this offseason when we see who they sign and what the roster is going to look like for next year. And then I'll probably do deep dives into more guys.
Yeah, it's a bit like, you know, it's a bit like we all got out of a long-term relationship and we're just kind of dating around for a bit. And it's like, well, do I really need to meet everyone's family?
Like, yeah, you're dating around for a bit. I am still staring at Giants telecasts and Yankees telecasts and playing Nothing Compares to You in the background.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all still doing that. I think there have been very few days since July 31st that I have not, at the very least, looked at the box score of every Mets, Giants, and Yankees game just to see what our guys did. And yeah, I feel you're protective of them, even with the like Javi situation in the past couple of weeks. I was like getting very defensive with I have one particular Mets fan friend who you've met, Adam, and we've talked a lot about what Javi is and what you need to expect from him, which is like you're going to get Javi bias. You can't trade for him and be mad at the things that he doesn't do well, or be mad that he's swinging at a pitch 5 feet outside of the zone, but then also get to celebrate when he makes some miraculous play that you've never seen in baseball before. Like that's what you get with Javi Baez.
Yeah, I mean, I just did last week a whole podcast with our friend of our mutual pods, I think, Sarah Sanchez, about that. Essentially, I called the podcast "Leave Javi Alone!" ! Exclamation point! And yeah, I mean, the point of it was, yeah, Javi Baez is a ride. Like it's something you take over the course of a long season where you're going to have those drops and pitfalls that just make you go, oh my God, how are we going to survive this? And then like from game to game or even at bat to at bat, all of a sudden he becomes brilliant. And that's just kind of who he is. And it's over the course of a long season, you can kind of see and experience that joy. And over the course of 2 months, yeah, I can see why it would be kind of hard especially when you're fighting for a playoff spot like the Mets had been. But nonetheless, like, yeah, Javi Baez is someone that you just kind of pull down the safety bar and hope it ends up well. And it usually does.
Right. Go ahead.
To kind of circle back to our current Cubs, the one tool I do know about Schwindel from what the broadcast has been telling us is that at least over the course of his time at the Cubs, contact has been almost as big a part of his game as the power has been, which is the big difference between him and Patrick Wisdom. That, it's still very much small sample, still only a month's worth of games, but he's able to get the bat and the ball a lot more than Wisdom does. Like at this point, everybody knows if you throw Wisdom a fastball like letter high and above, then you've won. But with Schwindel, they have yet to kind of figure out where the hole in his swing is, and boy, is he taking advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Grand Slam has to be for me one of the top moments of this like weird second half of the season. And much like the Taylor Davis Grand Slam, like certainly Schwindel is getting much more than a cup of coffee here, but like whatever happens the rest of his career, nobody can take what's happening right now away from him. And I think that's one of the coolest things about baseball. And it's also something that we've bemoaned in the past about, like, why do the fucking Cardinals always seem to find these scrap heap guys that just come out of nowhere and have these amazing, careers that start at 29 years old? It would be really refreshing for the Cubs to have a couple of those guys, and we'll see who ends up sticking. But, Kevin and I have talked about this a bit, but for you, like, of the people that we've now gotten to look at, both the Schwindels of the world and, like, Scott Efros, Cody Hoyer, those sorts of people, who are you excited about, and who do you actually like actively want to see be a part of the team moving forward?
I like what I hear about Alfonso Rivas' skill set in terms of both kind of his line drive contact swing and his defense in the field, which is, the best place to have defense, obviously. Talked my way into that. Wow. But I still need to see kind of long-term at the major league level how much that's going to play. Like he had one really beautiful at bat in the game against the Reds last night, where I think he fell behind in the count early and then took kind of the low outside pitch late in the game, just line drive into left field perfectly to bring the tying run up to the plate. And, that's the kind of skill set that we're expecting out of like Nico Horner or Nick Madrigal next year. And
a couple days ago, he had a similar at bat that he hit through the right side. That was like a 10 pitch at bat. So
right. Oh yeah. And that's what started the rally. That one of the many ones that Schwindel finished. And yeah, if you can have that play out over the course of 162, like that's a skill that not a lot of teams, let alone a lot of players, have at this point. So if that becomes like the Cubs thing for the next couple of years, now you can't build an entire team out of that, but to have a couple of guys that can really frustrate modern pitching like that, that's, I think, going to be one of the next market inefficiencies that you can jump on. So yeah, if this is a legit thing, and honestly, just speaking as a gay man, I'm perfectly fine with seeing Alfonso Rivas' face on the field as often as possible too. Put that and Nico together. Oh my, yes, please.
Are you saying that Frank the Tank doesn't do it for you?
Frank the Tank does it for me in other ways. Yeah, like the joie
more baseball-y ways
is a beautiful thing about Frank the Tank. Yes,
the joie de vivre.
Yes, but I'll take the Alfonso Rivas joie de face.
Well, I think something that we've kind of considered is like, of the guys that we've now gotten a look at, are we okay with a scenario where a couple of these guys become cheap options at certain positions in a scenario where the Cubs spend elsewhere? Like, are you okay with Schwindel being the starting first baseman next year if that means that the Cubs have signed Nicholas Castellanos and Marcus Stroman, and they've like, signed people elsewhere? Are we okay with this? Because I think we're all looking at the next couple of years as kind of like a stopgap sort of situation where it's like the Cubs likely are not, even if they spend, are likely not going to be like World Series favorites in the next couple of years. But while you're waiting for all these 17-year-olds to be ready to come up in a few years, there is absolutely no reason that a team the size of the Cubs should not be spending on free agents, even if it's for shorter deals, at higher, per year money. So I guess that's my question is like, of these guys, who are you okay with being a part of that if the Cubs spend elsewhere?
Well, I don't know if you've heard this news, but I've been scanning the MLB free agent tracker wires, and there's a first baseman for the New York Yankees that I think is going to be available during the offseason. That
Tony, I believe, right?
Yeah. Chicago doesn't have as big a little Italy as New York does, but there'd be a nice, population bump there that I think would come out to Wrigley Field for that. But in terms of Schwindel and Wisdom, like, over the course of a long season, if you decide that they're going to be your starter, I mean, that's essentially punting on the year, which we kind of know the Cubs are going to do next year anyway. I don't see either one being like, I don't see either one being useful as an everyday player, like an every single day guy. But if they wanted to, certainly like for Wisdom, use as kind of not a straight left-right platoon, but as kind of a 21st century platoon where if you're going up against pitchers who are good at attacking like the mid to low part of the strike zone with fastballs, then you start him and then maybe find a guy who's better at high fastballs to start when there are guys who fill that part of the zone. Mm-hmm. But I really, over the course of 162, I feel like I don't need to see either one for a full season to kind of know that this is just not going to be anything more than a stopgap. Right. So that doesn't excite me, I guess, is just kind of a long-winded way of saying that.
Yeah, I think if anything, I'm more excited about some of the bullpen arms that we've seen, and even like guys like Steele, who I think, obviously I would love to see Steele get to the point where he's like a top of the rotation starter. But I think the idea of some sort of like piggyback scenario, which we've seen, like the Steele Alzolay sort of piggyback scenario, especially considering that Alzolay kind of he's struggled a lot of the year, innings wise and just in general. Like, I'm fine with that being like a fifth starter, like the kind of Mike Montgomery, Eddie Butler scenario that we had a few years back. Like, I'm all right with that being like a spot in the rotation, but I am not all right with Kyle Hendricks being the only top of the rotation starter that we have. And I mean, obviously the Cubs have done a lot of trimming of this roster, but if you were going to do any trimming, if you were going to do any trimming, Ken Schultz, what might you use?
Gosh. I've heard tell that there's a successful product that of late might have a code Away Games Pod involved with it. I've never done a segue before into this, so this is fun.
I'm involving you in the ad read. That is true. If you go to manscaped.com and you use the promo code.
What a clever play on words.
I know, it's a very clever play on words. The Cubs take a lot of pride in
Oscar Wilde.
I think Oscar Wilde did write it, actually. That's funny that you mentioned that. Yes, if you go to Manscaped, you will get 20% off. What's that?
Oscar Wilde also big fan of manscaping.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
I think that sounds right.
So. Like, that is a historically accurate dick joke. Yes.
Well, here's something that's certainly not part of the ad read. If your Oscar is getting a little too wild,
oh boy,
and you need to take care of it,
that is the importance of being earnest, my friend.
Oh boy, Manscaped is the way to go. You're going to get 20% off your entire order. You're going to get free shipping internationally, wherever your balls may be. They will send you what you need. They'll send you the Lawnmower 4.0. As you can infer, it's been through 3 iterations. It's now new and improved, even better than before. I have one. They sent us a free one. I use it. I can't confirm if Kevin is. I don't know his manscaping routine, but it's a very good product. We would appreciate it if you use our promo code Away Games to support the show, and you'll get 20% off your entire order. So there you go.
If I may, your balls will never age, but a portrait of them will look like they're 80.
Is that an Oscar Wilde quote?
That is very much, this is the most literary Manscaped commercial you will ever hear. This is what you get for inviting an English major on the show. Yes.
Do you know if any of the transcendentalists used Manscaped? Was there like a Thoreau, Emerson, like at Walden Pond? Was he using the wireless because he couldn't get any electricity there?
He certainly had the time to use it at Walden Pond. I would say between that and growing yams, yeah, he probably spent a good amount of time working on his package.
Well, if you want to shave your yams, all right, let's move on. Ad read done. Well, you are going to Wrigley Field later today. So were you at the game last night, or have you been to? So when's the last time you were at a game? Was it
It was actually the last game that Rizzo and Bryant were in the starting lineup for the Cubs. The Wednesday game against the Reds, where they got on the subject of Manscaped, they got waxed by the Reds that night. But yeah, I've been past it a few times, obviously, when games have been going on. And for the most part, it's just been like roll my eyes when I go past it over the past month. But I did notice over this past week a couple times when I took the L past Wrigley and the game was going on, like there was that old kind of familiar excitement, that feeling of, yeah, I kind of want to get back there now. So if nothing else, I'm grateful for this past week of baseball for that,
Right. And one thing that's, I mean, certainly this was a lot of our growing up, but like of all the times I've been to Wrigley in the past, whatever it is, basically in this era since 15, there have been very few like stress-free days at Wrigley. And I am going to be in Chicago in a few weeks, and I'm still kind of toying with the idea of going to a game, but I like the idea of being able to enjoy Wrigley for being the beautiful ballpark that it is without feeling like every pitch is going to give me a heart attack.
Yeah, I suppose that is the nice thing about Septembers and years where you're just out of it, is you can kind of sit back and just, whatever happens, I'm good with. Let's hope it's just kind of a nice night for a ball game.
Right.
That's one of the things I guess about myself too, is that I do like occasionally going to games where I don't have that emotional commitment, because it's right. Everything else about the baseball experience kind of becomes heightened that way. And Wrigley in September is still like, it's one of the most beautiful months to be in Chicago. Right. So if nothing else, you got that, and they're sometimes fun. So this is really throwing me back to like late 1980s, early 1990s Cub fandom for me, where that kind of Harry Carey era of, well, we're going to go out and sing the seventh inning stretch and it'll be fun regardless. And if they win, hey, great. Now I don't want that to be more than a couple years, but I'm still willing to let that be the ride I take for a little while, because baseball should still be fun, even in years where our team got horribly massacred at the deadline. So I guess maybe this is I'm kind of just talking my way into this, but maybe that's one of the nicer things about still being at our core Cub fans who grew up with those, Sammy Sosa, or back in my day, the Dawson Sandberg era teams, that you still know how to enjoy yourself, even when they're not, the most competitive. And for something that's, essentially just a pastime and should have no deeper meaning to you in terms of, actual world importance.
Right.
That's keeping things in perspective. And that's not necessarily the worst skill to have.
Yeah, and the other thing about that is that, I spent so much of last year just like longing for the ability to go to a baseball game that I don't want to lose sight of that. Like the fact that you can go to Wrigley Field tonight and not fear for your life and be able to like sit at Wrigley and enjoy a game. That's not nothing either, because we all missed that and missed a lot of things last year. And I don't want to take that for granted, because it sucked not having that last year. And especially now watching sports with fans again, it is a completely different experience. Like sports, I enjoyed watching a lot of the, the bubble last year with the NBA playoffs and everything, but like sports without fans are not sports really. It's just a different thing. So speaking of which, and this is going to be kind of, I think the last thing here, we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but you are also going to the game Friday against the Giants, which will be the first game back for Kris Bryant. What are you looking forward to? What are you apprehensive about? What do you hope the Cubs do for him? What are your feelings going into that?
It's going to be an emotional situation. And I certainly hope that the tribute video they play for Bryant lasts longer than, say, 90 seconds, because he's probably worth more to the team than the one they put out when they traded him. It's having been to the Schwarber and Lester game from back in May. I'm curious to see like how different this one is going to emotionally affect me from that, because Schwarber and Lester, there was at least writing on the wall this offseason where it felt like, this is still Ricketts being unforgivably cheap, but you could at least kind of make a baseball sense reason why now, in the case of Schwarber, obviously, in retrospect, that baseball sense was incredibly wrong. But coming off of 2020, where he was, I believe, like statistically just about the worst hitter in the game. And after a real up and down stretch from the years before that, you could kind of see, well, I guess at the time I thought if they're going to invest money in some of the other parts of the core, I could see why they're letting Schwarber go. And Lester, I think age-wise, you kind of felt like, okay, it would only be $5 million and Ricketts could afford that. But I mean, again, he's definitely near the end of his career. So it's not like they're losing a whole bunch of years from him. So when I went to that game, it was like, this is the past tense Cubs, and it's a tribute to that past tense.
That feels like 5 years ago, by the way.
It really does. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, in that game,
I can't believe that's this season.
I looked at my scorecard from that game, and that was, Rizzo, Bryant, Baez, like it was all the guys who, until recently were still Cubs. So so that game, it was almost like, thank you so much. Welcome back. We love you. That was the response to that. This time around with Bryant, I mean, this was somebody who was kind of ripped from our hands. Like, this is somebody who most of us, anybody who was sane, didn't want to get rid of at the deadline.
Right.
And this is entirely a business-related move. And so I think there's going to be a real sense of bitterness to go along with the sense of gratitude and thanks.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting to me to see which side kind of wins in the moment when he comes up for his first at bat. Or, I mean, if he pulls an Albert Pujols and homers, like that'll be really fascinating to see. I would hope he'd get a standing ovation and a curtain call if that were the case. There's going to be a bit of negativity to go along with this because of the circumstances in which they got rid of him. And I'm going to be feeling both, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think my goal would be like the Cubs win the game, but Bryant goes 5 for 5 sort of thing. And I feel like the Bryant one hurt in particular because the timing of it was such that it was like literally at the deadline. Like it was announced at, 4:01 that day. And I had somehow foolishly convinced myself when I hadn't heard anything about him at that point in the day, like, oh, okay, maybe this means that if they've traded Rizzo and Baez, KB is going to be the one that they're going to keep, which I think you could certainly make a case for that having made the most sense, is like, if you're going to pick one of those three guys, KB is the guy. And I'm sure your reaction was the same, but like upon reading that news and seeing that, I was just in full on like, fuck everything mode. Like I can't even do this anymore.
Yeah, and seeing the footage of him shedding a tear with Anthony Iapoce in the dugout, I mean, that should be remembered by every fan of this team going forward, especially the idiots who try to insist that it means nothing to him and he's just after a cash grab, or he's someone who was all the bullshit that we've hashed over many times before. Like that was what being on this team meant to Kris Bryant. And he was someone who every time people insisted, the talking points of, well, you have to assume that he's gone during this offseason because Boras is his agent and there's no way that they can re-sign him after what they did to him with his service time. But that's bullshit. That's all. That's all.
And you know what? Scott Boras still works for Kris Bryant.
Right.
That's the thing. People
that's
forget.
All in service to ownership that wants you to think that, so they don't have to go out and make an effort. That's really what it boiled down to, is that neither Jed Hoyer or Tom Ricketts wanted to make the effort to say, okay, this is what it's going to take to bring back a historically great player at this position and a historically great Cub and an MVP of the World Series team. And that's what's most galling. This is the anger part
Mm-hmm.
of what's going to be part of this reunion on Friday, and you can't separate that because that's the way it ended.
Yeah. No, I think that's well said, and I am while I wish I could be there, I am very happy that you will get to be there to enjoy it. I
Mhm.
look forward to hearing about the emotions of it. I have no doubt that Kris Bryant will himself be emotional, and I implore every Cubs fan listening to this, if you are going to be at the game Friday or at all this weekend, to lose your voice
Yep.
and scream and shout and cheer, and let Jed Hoyer and the Ricketts know how hurt you are that Kris Bryant is playing in a different uniform at Wrigley Field.
Yeah, the one of the last games I went to before the massacre as well was the Monday night game with the Baez walk-off against
Yep.
Amir Garrett. And what I will remember most, even more so maybe than that incredible walk-off moment, was the sheer positivity that everybody in the ballpark decided we were going to bring to this night. And
Mm-hmm.
there were multiple chants. Bryant was in right field that night, and the right field bleachers kept chanting KB, 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 not even for anything he did. There were just random moments of the game. It was like everybody was resolved to let him know, yes, regardless of what you might have read on Twitter or might have heard from some stupid callers to the score, this is what you mean to us. You are a Cub. You will always be a Cub. We will always appreciate you. And that's the energy that I expect and hope that we're going to bring on Friday and throughout the course of this weekend.
Absolutely. Well, I can't think of a better place to end than that. Enjoy yourself today. Hopefully the Cubs get back on another winning streak, and enjoy this weekend. And as always, you can follow Ken at Ken Schultz _ on Twitter. Anything else you wanna plug?
My podcast every Friday on the Outsports Podcast Network, 3 Strikes You're Out. Just search Outsports. It'll be there. And yeah, I am looking forward to going to the Cubs game, which after the past month and a half, that feels like the biggest upset of the year.
Yeah. We'll see if I go in a couple weeks. I think I'm leaning towards it. I can't stay away. I've got my self-control.
It's in our blood, man. It's who we are.
I'll at least enjoy a hot dog and a $12 old style. You know, what can you do? As always, you can follow us at Away Games Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Please do, as much as we joke around about it, please do go to Manscaped if you are in need for any manscaping products or very comfortable boxer briefs, which I highly recommend. Use promo code AWAYGAMES. You'll get 20% off your entire order, plus free shipping. And that's it. Have a wonderful week, everybody. And we will be back next week to talk about KB's return to Wrigley and much more. Thanks, everybody.